I really like the Denali Coven too. They're so interesting. They're like the cooler vegetarian vampires, and I would love to tell you about their history. So these iconic blondes are actually super old. Like their dates of birth are listed as like the 1000s old. All three of them were turned by a vampire named Sasha, and we actually don't know much about her origins, but they all considered her to be their mother and themselves to be sisters. And the first person Sasha turned was Tanya, who was her biological niece, and they were very close. And Sasha loved the company so much that she wanted more daughters. And then came Kate, and Kate was actually a bodyguard slash attendant for a highborn female in a warlike tribe of Proto-Slavic people, and she was very skilled in the martial arts of her people. And one day, Sasha and Tanya attacked this caravan that was transporting Kate's charge, and Kate was the only one who survived. And Sasha was very impressed, and Kate also looked like Tanya, and she was like, hey, she'll fit right in. So she turned her, and Kate had this very deep sense of loyalty, and it transferred easily to her new family. And she was also special because she was able to protect herself and her family in a different way, because she had this gift of electric shock where she could inflict this painful shock on people with the palm of her hand. And originally it was just in her hand, but then she learned how to project it from anywhere in her body. And then Sasha found Irina, and Irina was really just a pretty peasant girl, and they were just like, hi Barbie, why not? And turned her, and then they were a happy little family. But then what happened was, unbeknownst to the sisters, Sasha created an immortal child and was very attached to him, and the Volturi ended up taking her out for it. But they realized that the reason she didn't tell them about it was to protect them, because that was the only reason the Volturi spared them. But they were super devastated over the loss of their mother. Tanya kind of assumes the role of the leader after that. And then what the Denali Coven is most prevalently known for is that they really enjoyed men, and particularly human men, and having relations with them. But naturally, this would almost always result in them eating the guy. So this earned them the reputation among humans as the succubus. But after a while, this actually became pretty depressing for them, because they grew to have like genuine affection for some of these human dudes that they were having relations with. And they would be like, oh, but I ate him. They were really sad and torn about that. And Tanya ended up having a similar experience to Carlisle, where she realized that animal blood, even though it was unappetizing, would satisfy her thirst. And they realized that the more they abstained from human blood, so not drinking it at all, it was easier to resist it. So after a few decades of practicing, they were able to commit to the vegetarian diet pretty successfully, which allowed them to have liaisons with human men without unaliving them. And then when they came across Carlisle, they had that in common, and that's why they got along and consider themselves to be cousins. Tanya also always indulged in this like lighthearted pursuit of Edward, mostly just because he was hard to get and didn't show interest. But honestly, I don't know why she even bothered with his boring crusty. Also, at some point, Eleazar and Carmen joined them. They are technically part of the Denali Coven too, because they also follow the vegetarian diet and were interested in it. We don't know all that much about them, except that he used to work with the Volturi because he has this gift where he can like sense other people's gifts. But then the Cullens ultimately indirectly ended up causing a bunch of mess for them, as they do, because first of all, Carlisle is the one who sent Laurent to the Denali Coven, because Laurent was like interested in Carlisle and his way of life, but he was really more interested in like Carlisle's power and leadership, and he saw that same kind of thing with Tanya. But he ended up having this like brief little thing with Irina, and he did like her, but Irina took it way more seriously. Like she considered him to be her man, and vampires are very vengeful about their mates. And of course, Laurent was taken out by the werewolves, and she was kind of bitter towards the Cullens about that whole thing. And so then Irina sees little Rent-A-Center bouncing off the walls like the creepy little creature that she is, and assumes that she is an immortal child, like what happened to her mother. So then she goes and snitches to the Volturi, and the Volturi ended up 86ing her over it. And honestly, they didn't need to do all that. They were pulling dramatic stunts at that point. They were trying to start a fight and start everything. Like, is Recorder technically an immortal child? No. Is she arguably worse? Yes. Are the Cullens menaces? Yes. But what did come out of that is Kate met Garrett, and it was just, you know, instant sparks, if you will, and she is attempting monogamy for the first time in her very long life. So good for her.